Elias Varan never believed in love, especially not with an alien. On the frozen wasteland of Xiphos 9, love was as lifeless as the ice beneath his boots. He was a researcher, sent by the Earth Federation to study anomalies on the planet. His days were long, his nights longer, and the only company he had was the hollow hum of machinery inside his station. Then she appeared. The blizzard that night was the worst he had seen in months. Winds shrieked through the valley, rattling his station's walls. The power flickered. Elias cursed under his breath and pulled on his thermal coat, stepping outside to check the generator. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the snow, shimmering, almost glowing. But when he moved closer, his heart lurched. A woman lay half buried in the ice, her body trembling, her long, crystalline blue hair fanned out like frost-kissed silk. Her skin had an unnatural shimmer, reflecting the dim light of his station. Not human. Elias's instincts screamed at him to report this. But something about the way her delicate form shuddered, her fingers twitching weakly against the ice, made him drop to his knees instead. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Faint pulse, still alive. Her silver eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with fear. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. A language he didn't recognize spilled out in desperate gasps. Then, with what little strength she had left, she reached for him. "Please, don't let me die." Elias didn't hesitate. He scooped her up into his arms, surprised at how light she was. As he carried her into the warmth of his station, a strange sensation pulsed through his body, like static electricity brushing against his skin. The door sealed behind them, locking out the blizzard. Elias laid her near the heat vent, careful not to overwhelm her frozen body with too much warmth at once. She stirred, barely conscious. Her voice was weak, but the words that left her lips sent a shiver down his spine. "I'll warm your bed," she whispered. "Just don't make me leave." Elias froze. His heart pounded against his ribs as he stared at her fragile form. Who was she? Why was she here, alone, on this dead planet? And most importantly, what did she think would happen if he didn't let her stay? Elias knelt beside the alien woman, his mind racing. Her silver eyes flickered open, hazy with exhaustion, but locked onto him with desperate intensity. "You don't have to do anything," he said cautiously. "You're safe." Her breath hitched, and she curled tighter into the thermal blanket, watching him warily. No one gives safety for free. The words stung. What had she been through to believe kindness had a price? Elias frowned and grabbed his medical scanner. Her body temperature was still dangerously low, her vitals weak. She wasn't just cold, she was starving. Moving quickly, he retrieved a nutrient pack from his supplies and knelt beside her. "Here, eat this." She hesitated, eyeing him as if expecting a trick. Finally, with trembling fingers, she took the packet and lifted it to her lips. The moment her fingers brushed his, Elias felt it again. A pulse of energy, like static, but deeper. His breath caught in his throat. The sensation wasn't painful, but it left a strange warmth in its wake, as if something inside him had shifted. Her silver eyes widened slightly. "You feel it too," she murmured. Elias clenched his jaw. He wasn't sure what it was, but he nodded. "What are you?" She swallowed the last of the nutrient pack before answering. "Chithari." His heart skipped a beat. He knew that name. The Chithari were myths, an ancient race thought to be extinct, hunted to the brink of annihilation because of one terrifying ability, soul melding. Elias had read about them in old research logs. The Chithari could form an unbreakable connection with another being, one that bound their emotions, thoughts, and even their lives together. The Federation feared them for it. And now, one of them lay in his station, staring at him with eyes that held too many secrets. "I'm Elias," he said, keeping his voice steady. "And you?" The woman hesitated, as if debating whether to trust him. Then, softly, she said, "Sayari." Something. In the way she said her name sent a shiver through him. It carried weight, like an echo of a forgotten song. Elias sat back, running a hand through his hair. "All right, Sayari. How did you end up on Xiphos 9? She looked away. "Escaping." "From what?" Silence. Elias exhaled. He had a feeling. She wouldn't answer, at least not yet. Sayari's fingers clutched the blanket, her body still tense. "If I stay," she whispered, "you'll never be alone again." Elias didn't know why those words sent a shiver down his spine. Elias had never considered himself a superstitious man, but something about Sayari felt otherworldly in a way that defied explanation. It wasn't just her shimmering skin or the way her silver eyes seemed to see straight through him. It was the way his body reacted to her presence, how the air itself seemed to hum when she was near. And then there was the touch. He had felt it the first time her fingers brushed his, a pulse of something deep, something alive. Now, 3 days after finding her in the snow, the sensation had only grown stronger. Sayari moved carefully through his small station, observing everything with quiet fascination. She touched the metal walls, the flickering control panels, even his books, as if memorizing every detail. "You act like you've never seen technology before," Elias noted, watching her from across the room. She hesitated. "Not human technology." He frowned. "Your people were more advanced, weren't they?" Sayari glanced at him, a flicker of sadness in her gaze. "We were," she said softly, "before we were hunted." Elias set his tablet down. "Because of soul melding." Her expression darkened. "Because they feared what they didn't understand." She turned away, her fingers tracing patterns on the glass window. "Zithari don't just bond, Elias. We become one with those we choose. Their thoughts, their emotions, even their pain. Our lives intertwine." He swallowed, hard. "That's permanent?" She nodded. "It cannot be undone." Elias exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. No wonder the Federation feared them. An entire race capable of forming inseverable bonds with others. It was a power that governments would either want to control or destroy. Sayari moved closer, standing just a foot away. "You feel it already, don't you?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Every time she was near, he felt an invisible thread pulling at him, an ache when she was too far. It wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something dangerous. "You're afraid," she murmured. Elias forced a chuckle. "Wouldn't you be?" Sayari searched his face for a long moment before stepping even closer. "I don't want to take your choice away," she whispered. "But if the bond has already begun, it may be too late." A chill ran down his spine. "What do you mean?" Before he could finish, an alert blared through the station. "Incoming ship detected." Elias turned to the console, his blood running. Cold. A Federation patrol vessel had entered the planet's orbit. They weren't alone anymore, and he had a feeling they were not here for him. Elias's hands flew over the control panel, his heart pounding. A Federation patrol ship in Xiphos 9's orbit was not a coincidence. Someone was looking for Sayari. His mind raced. He could pretend he never found her. He could turn her in. He could... A warm hand touched his wrist. He turned, locking eyes with Sayari. "They found me." Her voice was quiet, resigned. Elias clenched his jaw. "Not yet. We still have time." Sayari shook her head. "You don't understand. The moment they scan this station, they'll know I'm here." Elias exhaled sharply. He had minutes, maybe less, before the patrol. would initiate a scan. He turned back to the controls, flipping switches with desperate speed. If he could scramble the station's signature, maybe. I should go. Elias froze. He turned to her, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Go where? Out into the blizzard? They'll find you faster out there. Sayari's expression darkened. Better me than you. If they catch you helping a Zithari, you'll be marked as a traitor. The Federation doesn't forgive. Elias knew she was right, but the idea of her walking out that door, of losing her, sent a sharp pang through his chest. Damn it. When did I start caring this much? His fists clenched. I'm not letting them take you. Sayari tilted her head, silver eyes filled with something unreadable. Why? Elias opened his mouth, then hesitated. Why? Because she was helpless? Because she was a survivor? Or was it because the invisible thread between them had grown too strong to ignore? Before he could answer, the station's comm system crackled to life. Unregistered station. Identify yourself. Elias's throat tightened. They were already trying to contact him. If he answered, they'd demand a security scan. If he didn't, they'd assume the worst and send a search team. Sayari took a shaky breath. Let me handle this. Elias blinked. What? Her hand found his, fingers lacing through his. That pulse of energy surged again, but this time, it didn't stop. It wrapped around his thoughts, sinking into him. His breath hitched. The station lights flickered. The air vibrated with an unseen force. Sayari's pupils dilated, her body trembling as she melded deeper. Then, in a voice that was not hers, she spoke. Federation vessel, this is Patrol Unit 4C-19. No signs of life detected in this sector. Moving to the next quadrant. A moment of silence. Then, acknowledged, proceeding with the scan. Elias's blood turned ice cold. Sayari gasped, breaking contact. She swayed on her feet, weak, but she had bought them time. They'll see me, she whispered. Elias's mind raced. He had one chance to save her. He grabbed her hand. Then we make sure they don't. Outside, the Federation's searchlights descended upon the station. The searchlights swept across the frozen landscape, their piercing beams cutting through the darkness. Inside the station, Elias's pulse thundered in his ears. Sayari was right. There was no escaping a full security scan. Unless we give them something else to find. His fingers flew over the console, activating the station's emergency evacuation protocol. The old system had a fail-safe. If the station detected a core meltdown, it would broadcast a distress signal and initiate a controlled shutdown. If, he played this right, the Federation would think the station was compromised and unsafe to enter. Sayari swayed beside him, her breathing shallow. Using her power to mimic the patrol had drained her. Elias caught her before she collapsed, steadying her against his chest. You okay? He murmured. She nodded weakly. I just need a moment. They didn't have a moment. The patrol ship was already scanning them. Elias adjusted his grip on her and dragged them both toward the station's maintenance hatch. We're going underground. Sayari blinked up at him, confused. What? There's an old ice tunnel beneath the station, used for waste disposal. It's narrow, unstable, and cold as hell, but it doesn't show up on normal scans. Sayari hesitated, then gave him a tired but trusting nod. Lead the way. Elias pried open the hatch, revealing a dark, frost-covered tunnel below. The cold hit them like a blade, but they had no choice. He lowered himself down first, then helped Sayari through, sealing the hatch above them. Darkness swallowed them. Whole. The only sounds were their ragged breaths and the distant hum of Federation engines. Elias turned on his wrist light, illuminating the narrow path ahead. Can you walk? Sayari shivered but straightened. I'll manage. They moved. Quickly, their steps muffled by the ice. The tunnel stretched deeper beneath the surface, leading them away from the station, away from the soldiers who would soon tear through it. Minutes passed. Then, boom. The ground trembled as a controlled explosion shook the station above them. Elias cursed. They weren't taking chances. The Federation must have detected something unusual and decided to eliminate the threat outright. He grabbed Sayari's wrist and pulled her forward. We have to move. Now. She didn't argue. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading them into an open cavern. Jagged ice formations stretched toward the ceiling like frozen daggers. In the distance, Elias saw what he was hoping for, a hidden service exit, long abandoned. They were almost free. Then, a shadow moved. Elias barely had time to react before a figure stepped into the dim light. A Federation soldier, clad in dark armor, his visor gleaming. He had a weapon drawn. Stay where you are. Elias's heart slammed against his ribs. Sayari tensed beside him. They had been found. Elias's mind raced. The Federation soldier stood firm, weapon trained on them, visor gleaming in the dim light. No way out. Sayari's breathing was shallow, her energy still drained from earlier. Elias shifted subtly, moving in front of her. The soldier took a step closer. Step away from the Jithari. Elias clenched his fists. He could see it now. The end. If they took Sayari, she'd be executed. If he resisted, they'd brand him a traitor and put a bullet in his head. He had only one option. He had to fight. Elias surged forward, grabbing the soldier's arm before he could fire. The weapon discharged, the shot ricocheting off the ice cavern walls. A near miss. The soldier recovered fast, elbowing Elias hard in the ribs. Pain exploded through him, but he didn't let go. He couldn't. Sayari gasped, reaching for Elias. And then something happened. A pulse of energy surged through the air, crackling like lightning. Elias felt it deep in his bones, a warmth that spread from his core outward. The bond. Sayari's silver eyes burned like molten stars. Her fingers brushed Elias's shoulder, and the world shifted. The soldier staggered back, his visor flickering. His body convulsed as if caught in an unseen force. Sayari's voice was soft, yet it echoed. Sleep. The soldier's grip slackened. His weapon clattered to the ground. A moment later, he collapsed. Elias stood frozen, his breath ragged. What was that? Sayari swayed, her skin shimmering with faint energy. The bond. It's complete. Elias's blood turned cold. You mean... She nodded. I am bound to you now, and you to me. A sharp silence hung between them. Elias exhaled, running a hand through his hair. This wasn't just a connection. This was permanent. He could feel her emotions, her fear, her relief, and she could feel him. But now wasn't the time to process it. They had seconds before reinforcements arrived. We have to move, he said. Sayari steadied herself. Where? Elias looked past the cavern toward the abandoned exit. Beyond it, the frozen wasteland stretched for miles, but there was a chance, a slim one, that they could reach a hidden smuggler's outpost. It wasn't much, but it was freedom. He turned to Sayari, gripping her hand. Wherever we go together. Her fingers tightened around his. A slow, knowing smile crossed her lips. Then let's run. And together, bound by something neither of them fully understood, they disappeared into the ice. The end, or the beginning. What happens next? Should Elias and Sayari escape off-world? Or should they uncover the true reason the Federation hunts the Jithari? Let me know what you think.